Dr. Lisa Koche is board certified in bariatrics, internal medicine, and integrative medicine. Decades of research and her own personal medical journey led her to formulate a complete healing plan for the human body, starting with the underlying cause rather than treating just the symptoms. She is a founder and one of the key clinicians at Spectra Wellness in Tampa, Florida. Spectra Wellness, under Dr. Lisa's leadership, is dedicated to offering patient-centered, integrative healthcare that combines the best of conventional and alternative medicines to support overall health and well-being. Dr. Lisa Koche is an accomplished author and speaker, frequently sharing her insights on integrative medicine and wellness. She has been featured on numerous podcasts and health publications, and often speaks at conferences and seminars. She rose to prominence during the pandemic, acting as one of the most influential advocates for alternative prevention and treatments during the pandemic. We couldn't publish the original content of this interview due to YouTube and social media user terms and conditions. So, we are reposting to give you a historical glimpse and reminder on what was going on shortly after the pandemic. We hope you enjoy this enlightening episode of the Life Works podcast. Tell me your thoughts about what's going on in the world today.
I think what we're seeing in the world today is uncertainty. A lot of people who have stood by the government or the narrative that has come around are beginning to question, because everyone knows somebody who got sick in a way that they didn't think was possible, whether it's post booster or a husband and wife and the person didn't get infected. And there's enough stories of complications that were different than what the narrative said that I feel like between just enough time going by, enough people getting sick, but also social media and other platforms that have not been as censored, people are just a little bit confused, but also they're very weary of the journey. Many are just done. They don't want to hear more about it. And I've been sheltered the whole time because in Florida, it's a bit of a different world. My son's been in school without a mask for a long time at this point. So my patients very rarely are going to be wearing them. And we kind of honor if they do, we will wear them. So I think it depends in part where you are when you ask, what do I think is going on right now? I've never seen something so divided. And even interestingly, I was on a big trip. I was telling you, to Peru, and I was lucky enough that for the most part, when we shopped, they didn't require masks and inside the hotels or the resort. But my good friend was in Costa Rica around the same time, which had been really open this whole time. And she had her place where she was staying was like over the top with wearing the masks, and you had to be vaccinated. And so this is not just the US, it's like a hodgepodge of what do you feel like doing? So I think people, because of that, are just either checking out completely or they're confused and don't know what to believe.
Do you think that now with the narrative shifting and the news shifting, is COVID really a thing anymore?
I mean, I don't follow what they're saying. I'm generally aware, but I always go intuitively, but I also go by my patient population. We had a big run several months back, but I can honestly say today, like, I do not remember the last script I sent in for an active case. Now, maybe it's been a month, maybe it's been 6 weeks, maybe it's been 8. It seems like it's dramatically bottomed out here, or when it's coming, it's so minor that nobody's reaching out for anything. Is it a thing? It's clearly the virus has mutated to a less virulent form, which viruses tend to do. But I also believe that we as a humanity have helped that process, staying awake, alert, questioning, taking a little more responsibility for health. So a lot of that herd immunity has also passed through, whether it's the immunity from vaccines or the immunity just because enough people have gotten sick. All of that has helped.
What do we know now compared to, say, March 2020?
In March of 2020 was when we were all in still a little bit of fear, even myself included, right at the very beginning, because we really had no idea what was happening. I think now we know that there are inconsistencies in our messaging. How about that? We didn't know that in March of 2020. So I have gratitude for that because I'm one who is very trustworthy, and to think that something of a larger scale could be manipulated to a certain degree for outside gain was not something that had ever come on my radar. And again, we can't prove any of that right this minute, but clearly there were patterns that even somebody who was not questioning has started to question. So I think that's number one. What we know now is that there are inconsistencies in how we are receiving information as a society. As far as COVID, what do we know now? We know we're more suspicious about its origin coming from a lab. I think I suspected that from the beginning just because the way it was acting didn't seem fully viral, bacterial, or parasitic, and the drugs that were working were more anti-parasitic. So I think probably we know more of that. We know how it works, obviously, understanding a little bit more about spike protein and the impact. But what's been really interesting is how dramatically different the variants have been. We know there's different variants. Do we understand them completely still to today? Probably not. But we know a little bit more, obviously, how to manage people.
Do you think prevention is still possible?
Oh, absolutely. And I really haven't changed my preventive measures too much. The best that I can tell, the zinc and quercetin. So quercetin, which acts like a zinc ionophore, helps open the door and get zinc inside, like what hydroxychloroquine was doing. I have no reason to think that doesn't work. There has been some data on natural things, but those two, along with C and very high doses of vitamin D, is still like the cornerstone that what I've seen in my patient population, because almost everybody in my practice has done some formulation of that. We had some people in the ER. We hardly had anybody in this entire 2-year span admitted, maybe a handful. And one lady died, but she was in her late 80s. So knock on wood, especially too, we would jump in early with intervention with ivermectin or hydroxy and a Z-Pak. Yes, I think prevention, but also it gets to a place where I've had a lot of patients talk again about the old days where a kid on the block would get the chicken pox and everyone would go over and they'd hang a sign outside, like, anybody want to come get chicken pox? And then go play with the kid. These are like serious stories from the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And then we'd get chicken pox and it was no big deal. So I think a lot of people did get to the place too, even now, where it's like, get it, okay, and then I'll have immunity. Prevention or exposure and handling mild cases.
And I'll share this with you, Dr. Lisa. When you and I talked, probably in the late summer, early fall of 2020, you had suggested vitamins D, C, zinc, and quercetin as a sort of a baseline of prevention. My wife and I did exactly that, along with like multivitamins and other things. So we did exactly that. And I will tell you, we joke about it now. And aside from like very minor colds that have come through, we've actually had the most healthy couple of years we've ever had based on that prevention regime. I can safely say that using over-the-counter stuff, it works.
And I can tell you, and when we were talking earlier about what the good things are that have come out of this pandemic, is there are basic things. It's like, well, I eat pretty clean. I take a multi sometimes. And then we forget what this vessel is capable of, which is absolutely incredible what our bodies can do. Sprinkling in some very basic immune support, just like what you said, like everyday people are going, for the most part, are going to feel even better than they realized. And they're going to have the ability to either get a less virulent form of COVID if they do still catch it, or not get it at all. So my office, I've got staff, I've got about 12 people that work with me, some practitioners, some staff, and literally everyone, they didn't get it from the office, they got it from a family, and they would have to go out. Luckily, it was on different timelines. So they'd be out for the 10-day period of being secluded and hanging out and chilling on the side. Me and my nurse practitioner, my right-hand nurse practitioner, he and I never got it. And we're here, front lines, doing that all day, every day. So again, knock on wood. I think some of us just have an immune system, or maybe we had some exposure to something as a kid that was similar that we have old immunity for. Also, I think when you deal in what you're doing, I think there's a lot about frequencies of where you're at and frequency of this virus. So I do a lot of work with that too, like literally connecting in and just saying, I know you come in to help people wherever they're at a lot of times, because a lot of times when people had the downtime, they were really up leveling. Like it was a gift to have to be out for 10 days. And I would just have the conversation. I'm doing my inner work. I don't need you in my reality. Thank you for visiting.
So one of the things that has been happening is that we've seen now not just the one or two injections, but now we've seen now multiple boosters that have been approved. And one of the interesting observations that I've had actually over the last little while is that a lot of people actually who were, I'll use air quotes, fully vaccinated, ended up getting one of the variants. And that was, it was almost textbook. It was almost as if, I'm not trying to draw a causal conclusion, but I guess their third shot or fourth shot. And it was almost as if in succession, they got whatever new variant came. It's almost as if the shot gave it to them. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I'm not saying that's what happened, but it was very interesting to see that. Anyway.
Yeah. I just got chills when you said that. I know that we're never going to be able to know that for sure. My science thought is that let's just take it out of the fact, even the spike protein that's programming your body from a good way, like from a vaccine, the way vaccines work to make antibodies, like take that out. There's always going to be other stuff in shots just because there are chemicals and things to help drive the shots in. They may tell you they're safe, but they're outside chemicals. So our bodies have different capacities depending on our detox pathways, depending on how much toxicity through our life we've already been exposed to handle new onslaught of chemicals. And when you get 3 or 4, and then they're piling on, now they're marketing shingles vaccines. Why? Because the COVID vaccine was triggering shingles. So when you have these cumulative injections, it's pretty simple for many people's bodies to just get overloaded, and then their toxicity levels in the blood will jump high, and then the immune system gets suppressed. So does that mean when they crash the immune system, does that give a door for COVID to come in, or does that allow something in the actual shot to take over and seem like it's COVID? How are they testing? Is the testing picking up just what was coming in from the vaccine? I don't think any of that is clear. What is known is after having cumulative shots, especially people with poor detox pathways, especially people who had chronic fatigue, autoimmune, other types of illnesses, when that load comes in, the immune system gets suppressed. We're seeing symptoms for sure. More symptoms, the more shots.
What are the lessons that we've learned from the last couple of years?
So I love this question. There's so many. I think the biggest lesson that, and we say we've learned, the people that have been open enough to learn, is the importance of trusting your own critical brain, the importance of connection and community, the importance of questioning and not just accepting, the importance of kindness. I think one of the things I've seen on both sides, when a patient told me she went to a rally and I've tried to stay away from anything that's polarizing on either side. I like the information, but I want to be associated just with truth and acceptance and connection and empathy and science, which is very hard to find, unbiased science. But she said she went and it was great information, but the last speaker was talking about how anybody who had been vaccinated was going to have all this set of complications. And that got me so angry because it's a very high percentage of people that have been vaccinated at this point, whether it's with 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 or 4. And I believe everybody, like this body is capable of getting anything out. So, the right detoxification support and all kinds of other things. So I think learning to support another human, no matter where they are on their journey, is probably the most beautiful lesson. that some got out of this.
So if you were in a position to be a consultant to the government or an advisor to the government, what would you advise them for the next pandemic type of situation?
I would say, first of all, we're not waiting till the next because there will be a next because there always is something. Just like the lesson I try to teach myself, my kids, and my patients, we can only be responsible for here. So the sovereignty, self-love, self-care, and learning when the crap's hitting the fan around us or the hurricane is going around us, learning to stay in neutrality. So as a government, whatever form it needs to be in moving forward, to empower people, the people to be sovereign. So what does that mean? It means eating clean, taking care of their vessel, being kind, learning self-love, taking basic nutraceuticals like we talked about, moving their body, sleeping, really putting time, energy, and money into educating, but also providing potentially tools to measure things like sleep. There's a lot of gadgets now that'll empower people to test themselves. That is what I would do. And then if or when something else were to come out, it would be check one, are you doing the things needed to stay well? Like instead of, oh my God, we don't have enough ventilators. When we don't even know if a ventilator is how to treat the patient. And then as well, it would be, this is an outpatient illness. Hospitalizations and medication and treatment in the hospital, we're pretty savvy when we get to acute and severe illness in medicine. Why we abandoned any outpatient treatment or evaluation or support when other countries were passing out packs of D, zinc, and ivermectin, that is what raised a lot of eyebrows.
One of the interesting observations, again, that I had over the last couple of years is just how illness has been counted related to COVID. And I think about the numbers of deaths specifically. And I bring up death not as a sort of if it bleeds, it leads type of thing, but rather a critical thinking question that I have. In your view, has the same number of people died that would have otherwise died, right? And the same demographics of people died, whether COVID was here or not. And we're just counting them as COVID. Or was COVID really, truly a factor in death over the last couple of years?
Totally loaded and fascinating question because it is hard to give an answer because the hospitals were clearly, this is without a doubt, reimbursed differently for coding certain ways. So there was 100%, in my opinion, manipulation of data that way. There are different charts and calculations showing the same number of deaths happening that have happened every year. At this stage in my life and career, I don't believe any data. That's sad, but I don't believe any data on the side that supports what I think or the side that doesn't. I believe only what I can actually prove. And it's really hard to prove anything right now because it's all being navigated through lenses of certain agendas.
So what are you doing for your own research? Are you really just looking into your practice and using that as a sample? Or are there other sources that you feel confident to draw from?
That's a great question. At this point, I look in my practice for sure. And like I said, we didn't have anybody die from COVID except one person over the couple of years. So I can only trust what I've seen and what I hear firsthand. In terms of other totally pure sources, I don't know. What I tend to do is pull from people with varying opinions and really just keep trying to read up on it. And I don't think we're ever going to know. So then it becomes, let's just take the fact that this was clearly blown out of proportion. Clearly, there weren't as many deaths as they said. Clearly, vaccinating over and over makes no sense, especially to a non-virulent strain. But I can tell you, literally, I got a text last week, and this was a good friend of mine in high school who is a surgeon, and I believe he's part of the Kaiser. So he like completely on that side. And his wife like secretly messages me, private messages me on Instagram. I need some help here. He's gone off deep and he wants to vaccinate the kid, all this stuff. And I will just say bits and pieces. I have too many other things I'm responsible for, right? And he literally texted me last week that I did not yet respond to a study about ivermectin did not decrease death outcomes. Okay, I don't even want to respond because I don't know who published the study, who supported the study, who was in the study. I'm not going to spend the time analyzing all that. All I know is I have patients, too many to count, that when they got their hands on that drug, they were better within 24 hours. That's it. So I will continue to look for an unbiased source. I cannot quote one right now.
No, and that's an honest answer. I appreciate you saying that honestly. In terms of how people can take care of themselves, I want to shift the questioning a little bit toward solutions at this
Yes.
point. What can people do? What would you suggest as a physician, as a healer? What's the recipe for people to really take care of themselves, either from a preventive posture or just a general self-care posture? What are the ingredients, those ideal ingredients for a person's day to really take care of themselves properly?
I think number one is if you're still living day by day with the media, that puts you on a ride that there is no returning from. It is rough. And that's where you surrender to outside running your life. So I give a gerbil and a wheel analogy, and the gerbil can run super fast. And so that can be, you can go to your work, take care of your family, work out, do all these great things as long as you're controlling the wheel. You can go as fast as you want. But if somebody is spinning the wheel, media, government, another person, your job, your boss, your own thoughts that are not positive, then what happens to the gerbil? The gerbil's in a free fall. So number one recommendation, retain control of the wheel, which doesn't take much. Just turn the TV off, get outside and put your feet in the earth, connect to nature, because that is a huge benefit that most of us forget about because we're just so inside. Just literally lean up on a tree or put your feet in the earth. There is actual science to that. It helps our mitochondria. It helps our cells communicate better because we're actually energetic beings that communicate via quantum energy, which sounds crazy, but this is being proven. So the connection to nature, the disconnection from outside influences, and the more that you can feed yourself positive thoughts, healthy food, self-love, a little bit of walking, a little bit of connection, the more you'll find strength and a more vibrant immune system, and eventually even more just flow and joy and manifesting and purpose. So then finding your purpose too. So I think if you're somebody who is getting through the day, putting out fires versus living a life where you do have fun or self-care or service where you're helping others or connection, that is the number one way to feed your body in a positive way. So those are probably some of the biggest tips. In addition to all the basic of, get movement, eat food that's not processed, be out away from devices for a certain period of time each day.
That's great advice, Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. What is the biggest takeaway that you are hoping people will walk away with from the last couple of years?
That they actually can do more for themselves than anybody else can. So if you can walk away saying, I had all these shots, I still got COVID. I sat here fear-based and I still got COVID and nothing changed. Or, wow, I took those vitamins and I feel better than I have in a long time. Or, wow, I decided that obese people have worse outcomes. Maybe I need to just walk and stop eating processed food. That realization.
I think that's wonderful advice to be able to end our discussion for today. Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your advice, for your wisdom. I think, people, if they took time to listen to this and really put it into practice, I think they're going to see real transformation in their lives. Thank you again so much.
I absolutely think so as well. It just takes one person empowered and in their own energy and sovereign to influence, to excite, to inspire everyone around them. So taking that action.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thanks for watching and listening. Hit the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode. And check out some of these other clips from the podcast.